does my soul have to dry before love can collide with the mess of my life? That's not hard for you. That's not hard for you. 'Cause you see through spectrums of darkness and light, but I'm losing my way and I'm losing my mind. I can't see the truth. Help me see the truth. 'Cause out here in the dark, underneath the canopy of stars, constellations falling from your heart. They tell me that I'm not alone, 'cause honestly I'm so alone. But promise me I'm not alone. Whoa. Promise me I'm not alone. When I felt the light of the moon on my face, the memory of sun that been shining for days, you've already been in this desolate place. You've already been here and you've made a way. Pinbricks of glory strung out across the sky, memories of darkness undone by the light, reminding me you were right here by my side. You're here by my side. You're here by my side. Out here in the dark, underneath the canopy of stars, constellations falling from your heart. They tell me that I'm not alone, and know that I'm never alone. 'Cause you find me and bring me back home. And I'm never alone, never alone, never alone, never alone, never alone. Out here in the dark.
Over the mountains and the sea, your river runs with love for me. And I will open up my heart and let the healer set me free. I'm happy to be in the truth, and I will daily lift my hand. I will always sing of when your love came down. Oh, oh. Over the mountains and the sea, your river runs with love for me. And I will open up my heart and let the healer set me free. I'm happy to be in the truth, and I will daily lift my hands. For I will always sing of when your love came down. I could sing of your love forever. I could sing of your love forever. I could sing of your love forever. I could sing of...
Good morning, everybody. We are so glad that you're here with us. Is my mic? You guys can hear me, right? Yeah. Perfect. I've been having trouble with my brain this morning. So we're so glad that you're here. It's City Lights Day. We're going to talk about what it means to love God and love our neighbor all at the same time. And one of the things that we do when we come here to worship, hopefully, on our good Sundays, what we bring here is a reflection of the rest of our week. It's not like this wholly, totally separate thing. We don't think there's some barrier there. We've been in this series about where heaven meets earth. And we hope that this moment, when we sing together, is one of those moments where heaven meets earth. And to just make that a little clearer, what I want us to go into this service thinking about is just, was there anything, did you experience any provision this week? Yes. Somebody did. One person did. Did you experience any, did you have a meal? Yes. Did you have your daily bread? Did you don't, this is rhetorical, but you feel free to answer. But did a cup of coffee show up when you needed a cup of coffee to show up? Right? Yeah, a few of them, 3 times a day. Did a friend reach out right when you needed a friend to reach out? Or did you stumble on to some moment where you felt not your second wind, but your 45th wind? Did you experience any of that this week? Was there some moment where the sky was just a little clearer, a little more beautiful than you imagined it ever could be? Then would you get up on your feet if you're able and sing with us out of that space this morning?
For the living well, only you can satisfy. Sweetness at the mercy seat, now I've tasted, it's not hard to see. Only you can satisfy. There's honey in the rock, there's honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock. There's honey in the rock.
Freedom, where the Spirit is, it's bounty in the wilderness. You will always satisfy. There's honey in the rock, water in the stone, and on the ground. No matter where I go, I don't need to worry now that I know everything I need you've got. There's honey in the rock, purpose in your plan, power in the blood, healing in your hands. Started for when you said it is done. Everything you did cleaned up. I'll keep looking, I keep finding. You keep giving, keep providing. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. I keep praying, you keep moving. I keep praising, you keep proving. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. I keep looking, I keep finding, you keep giving, keep providing. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. I keep praying, you keep moving. I keep praising, you keep proving. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. I have all that I need. You are all that I need. There's honey in the rock, water in the stone, manna on the ground. No matter where I go, I don't need to worry now that I know everything I need you've got. There's honey in the rock, purpose in your plan, power in the blood, healing in your hands. Only when you said it is done. Everything you did cleaned up. There's honey in the rock. 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 Oh, how sweet it is to trust in you, Jesus. Oh, how sweet it is to trust in you, Jesus. Oh, how sweet it is to trust in you, Jesus. let your kingdom come. Father, let your will be done on earth as in heaven, right here in my heart. Father, let your kingdom come. Father, let your will be done on earth as in heaven, right here in my heart. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us, as we forgive the ones who sin against us. Forgive them, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil one. Yeah, let your kingdom come. Father, let your kingdom come. Father, let your will be done on earth as in heaven, right here in my heart. Father, let your kingdom come. Father, let your will be done on earth as in heaven, right here in my heart. Yeah. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us, as we forgive the ones who sin against us. Forgive them, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil one. Let your kingdom come. We're gonna sing it's yours, and it's yours, it's yours, all yours, all yours. The kingdom, the power, the glory is yours. It's yours, it's yours, all yours, all yours. And the kingdom, the power, the glory is yours. It's yours, it's yours, all yours, all yours. The kingdom and the power, the glory are yours. It's yours, it's yours, all yours, all yours. The kingdom, the power, the glory are yours. Father, let your kingdom come. Father, let your will be done on earth as in heaven, right here in my heart. Father, let your kingdom come. Father, let your will be done on earth as in heaven, right here in my heart. On earth as in heaven, right here in my heart.
I don't wanna be known for what I hate. I don't wanna miss the things that make your heart break. I don't wanna say things you never say. Come have your way in me. Let justice roll like a river in my soul. Let mercy overflow like a flood. Let kindness burn like a fire in my bones, that lights the way back home for all to come. I wanna be known by love, known by love. I wanna be known by love, known by love. Come and help me see the way you see. Come and show me how to be your hands and feet. I wanna be the friend that you would be. Come have your way in me. Come have your way in me. Let justice
Let's pray. God, help us to stay right here for a minute with the song of love repeating through us. We're here because we want to believe that your hands made this place, that your heart holds this place. God, in this moment, help us to sit with this idea that you know us. You know the week we've had. You know what defeats we've had this week. You know what victories we've had. God, help us to know right now that we are your beloved. God, love us so much that we can't help but give it away. For the way that Jesus loved, for the way he forgave, for the way he laid his hands on a shoulder, for the way that he looked people in the eye, for the way that he knew everybody's story before they told it. We thank you. In his good name we pray together. Amen. Amen. Y'all can grab a seat. You might have noticed it's getting a little Christmassy around these parts. We like to do it up. We don't think we can't really play the music loud enough or make enough lights to give God what God deserves. But we do our best to try. We have coming up tonight, if you are a student or know a student or just if you have, whether you've been a part of our student ministry or not, you are invited tonight to a meal. They're going to be celebrating Friendsgiving tonight. So all middle school, high school students are invited to that. It's a good on-ramp if you've never jumped in and tried it. Just come. There'll be snacks and food and cups there to hold in case you feel weird about it. So tell your kids to come for that Friendsgiving tonight. Also, we're not going to tell you exactly what our theme is for Christmas Eve because we want to pay our proper respects to Thanksgiving first. So we're going to hold off on what Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve services are going to look like, but we do want you to know their time. So just take a look at the side screens. All the times are going to be up there. This is actually our Christmas series. Is just going to be about joy because we figure that's a good thing for us to revisit every year is how Jesus brings joy all year round. So make a plan to join us Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve at one of those times. Make a plan to bring friends. There'll hopefully be plenty of room for you here over Christmas Eve and Christmas Eve. Now, it is City Lights Day. And I am excited that it's City Lights Day because I got a sweatshirt. But even more than that, I think all throughout the pages of Scripture, there are two big calls on the people of God. To love God and to love your neighbor. And over thousands of years, over 3 or 4 different languages, over the course of world crises and world wars, God just keeps coming back to this refrain, this chorus in the song. You should seek to love the one who made you. And you should seek to love all the other ones that God made. And that there's nobody outside of that category. That you should love God and love your neighbor. And City Lights was this thing that we realized as a church, we need to be better at the love your neighbor part. Because in the story of God, those things are intertwined all the time. You cannot have one without the other. They are the peanut butter and jelly of the Bible. You have to love God and love your neighbor. And I want us to just sit with that word neighbor because I imagine that it maybe stirs up some stories in you. That neighbors are the source of a few different things. Neighbors are the source of conflict. Anybody know that? You guys, I'm not telling you, you know that, right? My parents lived in the same house for over 50 years, and they had neighbors that they shared for 40 of those years. And they had 40 years of swapping recipes, of exchanging tools, of talking over the fence, 40 years of life together in the same houses, having their kids around the same time, 40 years of that. But every once in a while, it would come up that in the early days of their being neighbors, there was 3 feet that were in dispute. That the neighbors proactively put a fence up and stole 3 feet of the Buffington land. And every once in a while, it would come up. It was like, I haven't actually watched Yellowstone, but I feel like I already have lived it, because I would hear about 3 feet. And every once in a while, there was a strip of that in the front yard where there was no fence, but it was clearly like part of what they had stolen from us. And every once in a while, I feel like my parents would just not mow that part. It's that teeny tiny little revenge. Neighbors are the source of great conflict. I don't think I have to tell you about that. I imagine you know. And this works out in micro and macro ways, right? We all probably have disputes. The neighbor parked in the place where we don't want the neighbor to park. The neighbor is not weeding their yard like we would weed the yard if it were our yard. There are all these micro conflicts, but there are macro conflicts. There are times when that 3 feet, people will drop bombs over that 3 feet. People will wage wars over somebody's fence being built a little too close to their house. I think we know that. Neighbors are a source of conflict. It escalates sometimes to wars. But neighbors are also a source of great care. Maybe you can think of times where a neighbor has stepped in and helped you. I have some friends who just got a farm up in Springfield. That was their COVID purchase, was a farm. And they have had to lean on their neighbors to fix their tractor, to teach them how to kill chickens, to teach them what their donkeys needed. And they have found this great community where every time they ask, they receive out there. That every time they have some need, they've been able to find somebody who was more than happy to meet that need. I hope maybe you have known that neighbors can be a source of great care. My parents, the neighborhood that they lived in for those 50-some years was just featured not too long ago in the USA Today, has the most diverse zip code in America. That it was, when I was growing up, it was sort of diverse, but then over the years, there was several refugee settlements in their neighborhood, but the people who were already there just stayed. And so it's one of the most diverse zip codes in America because people didn't move away. They just kind of stayed and tried to figure it out. And I'll just tell you that in the last few years of my parents' life, they needed their neighbors so badly. And my dad, one time, he decided he was going to shovel the snow, fell at the end of the driveway, and just kind of had to wait for somebody to come along. And would you know it? Somebody came along, helped him up, got him back in the house. My mom, in the early stages of Alzheimer's, she was still taking walks. But she was having trouble with her eyesight. She was having balance problems. And so she was, a half mile from the house and stumbles on the uneven sidewalk. And her face is just bloodied and bruised. And some stranger whose name and face I do not know got her home and called my dad and got him home for her. And it was so vulnerable, but it was like this place of just trusting that the love would show up, right? That even though there were disputes over fences, that their neighbors would show up for them. Neighbors were a source of care. During COVID, my 2 best friends were a dog walker named Tom, who I would just see all the time. We'd wave as we were walking our dogs. And a little 10-year-old girl who would wave at me. I think she was actually waving at my dog, but he doesn't have hands, so I would wave back on his behalf. But she was like my best friend during COVID. We've never even talked, but every morning we love each other by waving at each other across the way. I hope you know that neighbors can be a source of great care. And I think we all know that neighbors can also be a source of mystery. What are they doing over there? Neighbors, that's the first reality show, is the neighbor's house, right? I got to live in downtown Cincinnati for a while, and there was a woman who, I think I might have told this story before, there was a woman who I would see almost every day, and she was just searching for something. Her eyes were always down. She would look through every trash can, every gutter. You couldn't distract her. We tried to talk to her a couple times, see what she needed help, and maybe help her find the thing she was looking for, but she was very focused. And I don't know if she had a language problem or a survival problem. I don't know what she was looking for, but I love to imagine that she was searching for a lost ring or something. That she wasn't looking for cigarette butts, but she was looking for like a lost treasure every day. She was a source of great mystery to me, but I would see her all the time. I knew her patterns. I felt like I knew something about her, but I didn't know her whole story, right? You're looking in the window, you're watching their patterns, they're coming in, they're going out, and they're a source of mystery to you. Or maybe not, maybe am I the only one? I don't know. Maybe you guys do that. Maybe you watch The Neighbors, I don't know. They're a source of great mystery. So I want us to think about that. When we think about neighbors, they're a source of conflict, a source of care, and also a source of mystery. One of Jesus' greatest hits is a story he tells about neighbors. And it's the story of the Good Samaritan. And it's the kind of story that you could go your whole life without ever stepping foot into a church, and you would still know something of this story. Because what have we done with this story? We've named hospitals after it. We've named like car mechanics places after it. There are like businesses that travel around as Good Samaritans. There are mission groups called Good Samaritan. So this story Jesus told is a pretty big deal in our culture, that it was such a great hit for him that it still matters. It's still the name on buildings, because this story that he told changed everybody's mind about what a neighbor was. So because it's such a good story, and because it's so like prolific in our world, I want us to just get weird with it today. You guys ready for that? Game for it? You ready to get weird with it? All right, I want to bring out our City Lights team. Because it's City Lights Day, and we want to show off our sweatshirts, I'm going to bring them out. You know several of them from other contexts or from being up here doing different things, but they're going to help be my they're basically props. This is prop comedy, and these people are my props. So we have Leah, who leads our City Lights. We have Steve and Pete, who are, what's their official titles? Regional pastors for City Lights. We have Olivia, who's our student pastor hosting Friendsgiving, who stepped in to be our 5th person. So that's why she didn't get a shirt. But yeah, she didn't get one yet, but we'll see. If she does a good job, we might get her a shirt. We have John here, who's also one of our pastors, and who also volunteers and leads our music with us. So they're going to be our players. And what I want to do is just read through the story. I've been reading this book called Rehearsing the Scriptures, which is about, like, how do you make the Bible come to life for people? How do you, like, if you sit down and want to read it, or you're in a Bible study, or you have a few friends who want to get weird together on a Saturday morning and read the Bible, what do you do to bring it to life? And so this woman, Anna Carter Florence, suggests rehearsing it, like almost bringing it to life like a play and embodying it. So stepping into the story and saying, what do we think's going on in the lives of the people in this story? And it helps us to build empathy. It helps us to make connections to the holy things of Scripture and our regular Tuesday days. So that's what we're going to practice here. And I say practice because we don't know what's about to happen, right? You guys don't know. It's not necessarily whose line is it anyway, but it could get there. We'll find out. So I'm going to read the story, and I'm going to cast it. You may know that the Good Samaritan is actually a story inside of a story. So the first thing that happens, we need a Jesus. Leah, you're going to be our Jesus. We're like the Hamilton of casting. We're not into the demographics. We're just into embodying the role. Steve, you're a lawyer type, right? Yeah, very smart, very into books and reading and all the answers. So this is what it says happens. An expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. You're kind of a troublemaker, Steve. See if you can embody that. See if you can feel what it'd be like to be a troublemaker. Teacher, he said, what must I do? We're about to be serious. Heaven's at stake. He said to him, what is written in the law? What do you read there? He answered, do you know? Do you know the answer? Nope. No. Yep. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Jesus squeezed that little neighbor in there to make sure the point. And he said to him, you have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live. But wanting to vindicate himself, he asked Jesus, who exactly is my neighbor? Now, what do you think he's looking for here in this answer?
Kind of try and trap him maybe a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, to see if Jesus will give
You asking Steve, you asking the lawyer.
the lawyer.
Oh.
Yeah. What do you think the
Well,
lawyer's
yeah,
trying to do?
I'm just trying to see where Jesus stands on things here.
Yeah. And maybe see, like, how many houses down is that? Does that include, like, around the block? Because those people.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to love those people. So he's trying to sort of test Jesus. He's hoping Jesus will give an answer that gets him into trouble. Because this is a world where neighbors is not a game. Neighbors could mean, like, causing trouble if you love the wrong neighbor. And so this is the world Jesus is answering this question in. Now, Jesus tells a story, right? Which is why we have 3 more players here. So let's cast this. I'm going to move over here just to keep it exciting. Isn't that exciting? No, I liked it better over here. All right, so we need a victim. Leah, yeah, you're going to be our victim. There's some Christology there. I don't know, I'll play with that later. You're our victim, and there is a robber. Yeah, you're getting typecast here. All right, so a man, could you embody a man? A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers who stripped him. We'll skip that part. I forgot that was in there. Beat him and took off, leaving him half dead. So that's where we are. Yeah, you're half dead. Now let's hit pause here. How's that feel?
Well, I'm a bit vulnerable now
Yeah,
and embarrassed.
yeah. And there's some shame to it, probably, that you got overtaken. Yeah. Confusion. Yeah, you were just out for
Why, God?
a walk. Yeah, where's God? How
Right.
could this happen to you? Yeah, Steve, you're a robber. I've seen the convictions. What do you think? Why does this guy do this to this vulnerable person?
He's broke.
Yeah, maybe so. He needed the money. He's desperate himself. Yeah. So the idea of this exercise, try to just imagine not just the worst of the person, but what could really be happening, right? That's what Jesus is doing as he's telling the story. So we could maybe think the robber had a survival thing in mind, or just maybe he's got an anger deal.
Could be.
Yeah, maybe he's just so mad he needs to take out his madness on somebody else. So he goes away. He leaves our victim for dead. Now, you would think this is hard stuff, but don't worry, because a priest is about to walk by. Who wouldn't want to have a priest walk by? Now, by chance, a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, this is not a priest, but it's about as close as you could get. A Levite, you'd be like, oh, great. Well, the priest is kind of mean, but here comes a Levite. A Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by him on the other side. Now, let's just talk to these horrible people real quick. Tell us what do you think, like, how would that person, you kind of took your eyes away, right? You imagine that person maybe trying to just, if I don't see it, it's not real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got church things to do. I don't have time for this.
That's right. Yeah, and how often does that happen?
A lot.
Yeah. Olivia, did you imagine any kind of motivation there into walking by?
This is a lot of liability, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
So, not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yeah, exactly. That's a classic case there. Yeah, and I think that thing right there's, if you've ever studied this story, that's a part of the motivation was, if that person isn't just half dead but actually dead, you're not supposed to touch them. You got to keep your holiness in place, and you got a church meeting to get to. Yeah. All right, let's talk to our victim. How's that feel? How's that feel with the feet to just walk by?
Who's going to help me?
Yeah, I mean, I think to really sit in that, right? Because you hear the feet, and you think, oh, help, a rescue, somebody's come along, and
Sure.
then they don't.
Yeah, so I'm now even more confused and wondering what's wrong with me.
Yeah, and some shame, like if there wasn't shame from getting attacked, the shame would go deeper, that you weren't worthy of being helped. And I think that's important for us to draw out. But I don't know if you guys know, but the story is not done. Because a Samaritan, while traveling, we got anybody left over there, John? Come on in, you're our hero. Now, important to note that we hear that word Samaritan and we hear hero. But at the telling of this story, if our victim sees a Samaritan coming, that's not what she thinks. She thinks, oh, a Samaritan. They're the worst. That guy's not going to stop. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came upon him. And when he saw him, it says, he was moved with compassion. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, treating them with oil and wine. And this oil and wine is meant to help disinfect, to clean them up. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 days' wages, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, take care of him. When I come back, I'll repay you whatever more you spend. Goes above and beyond, right? Doesn't just clean her up and feel good, but goes above and beyond. Which of these three? Well, we'll come back to this in a minute. Let's stay right here. John, you had some time to think about this. What do you think is your motive? When you think about this story, like, what stops the Samaritan?
Just seeing
a person, yeah.
Seeing that person there.
Yeah.
And seeing them in need. And thinking to myself, I've been in a ditch before, maybe. In some fashion, I've been where he or she was.
Yeah.
And I've found joy in not always being somebody that chooses to say no.
Yeah.
Maybe I just live in the yes, and I want to help you.
Yeah.
I've been there.
How would it feel to finally have somebody step up and to feel that oil and wine kind of wash over you?
Well, so I had a thought earlier when you were talking that made me say that maybe if I saw a Samaritan and I didn't like Samaritans, that maybe I would be conflicted of whether or not I even wanted that help from that person.
Yep.
And so I'm thinking now that maybe, though, settling into it saved my life would be a real perspective change, and there would just be gratitude.
Yeah, it would be humbling, right?
Really,
if you already have a conception
still
of this
probably
person.
Embarrassing, and maybe even shame for my pride.
Yep.
But humbling for sure.
Yep. All right. Now let's go back to our framing device here. Let's get our Jesus and our lawyer back up here. Because remember, this started as a story within a story. So the lawyer has heard this story from Jesus. And it says that Jesus says, which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And the lawyer, who knows I've been out lawyered, says,
The one that showed mercy?
that's right, that is the right answer. And then Jesus said to him, go and do likewise.
Go and do likewise.
Yeah. So how does that feel? How do you think that would
Freeing.
feel? Free?
Yeah.
All right. That's to you, Steve, being maybe better than
That's
this lawyer.
probably right.
I think the lawyer, I'm projecting maybe, so that's the fun part of this, is that we might have different layers. Because I think if I was asking, do I really have to love the guy at 3 houses down? And what Jesus says is there's no limit on your neighbor. I might walk away feeling a little defeated. Yeah, but if I had a better heart, I would feel free, right? I love that. All right, let's thank our players. Let's thank our prop comics. This is what I love about this story, right? Is that Jesus could have just made this so simple and easy and said, just love all the people. Just love them all. Just take care of them. Instead, Jesus told this story that opened up their imagination, right? And again, we've heard it so many times. Maybe we already knew the ending long before this even started. But what Jesus does is he invites them to imagine your worst enemy has better than you. Imagine your worst enemy, the person you think is the scum of the earth. Imagine them as being holier than holy. There's no communicator like Jesus. There's no storyteller like Jesus, and the world turns on him, changing their imagination about what a neighbor is. That the Christian community for thousands and thousands of years has been trying to bring this story to life, has been trying to live up to this story that Jesus tells, that our neighbor, there is no limit to who our neighbor is. Now, because this is such a genius story and because Jesus is so smart, there are all these layers. I've been studying this guy, Mark Allen Powell, who what he does is go into different cultures and like tell them these stories and see if they hear something different and than an American audience would hear. And so he did this Good Samaritan story. He went to several churches and different cultural centers in Tanzania. And he asked them, like, what do you hear in the story? And one of the things they brought out is that if you are the person in the ditch, you don't have a lot of room to be prejudiced. That if you are the person who needs help, you don't have a lot of room to reject help. And what they found from the story is that God will always help, but it will often be surprising. That you think you know where God is going to show up and how God's going to work, but it will surprise you. And one of the things they brought out is that this is not just a story where the answer to who is my neighbor is whoever needs my help. Right? Maybe that's a way we could go, is to say, who is our neighbor? Anybody who needs our help. But what they heard was the answer to who is my neighbor is also whoever helps me. This is a favorite story of Martin Luther King Jr., who also is a reverend and a preacher. We don't always pay attention to that part of his story, but he was a reverend and a good preacher, and his favorite story was this one to tell. And his big point that he would say at the end of that story was, are you ready to be rescued? Because a lot of times we hear that story and we almost immediately cast ourselves in the helpers, right? Or maybe we can admit with Pete that there have been times where we looked the other way. Or there have been times where it was too messy to get involved, or we're not the person to help. But we often cast ourselves as either the helper or the not helper. We very rarely want to see ourselves as the person in the ditch. And what I want us to say as we move into talking about City Lights, the beautiful things that we want to do as a church, absolutely we are going to bring light, we're going to do whatever we can to help people who are in the ditch, but I want us to hear there is very much a way in which we are the people in the ditch. That we are the people who are caught up in our selfishness. We are the people who are trapped in our own homes, who try to get into our garage without seeing any of our actual neighbors, who look the other way, who have better places to be than in places where we're helping. And I promise you that we need just as much rescuing as everybody else. The place where we believe that heaven meets earth is when we show up for our neighbors. We believe that the space where heaven meets earth is when we show care, when we receive care. And this City Lights initiative is not just about us bringing other people what we need or what they need. It is about us needing to be challenged, to be refined by what it means to love God and our neighbor at the exact same time. When we serve, absolutely we are bringing light. But I promise you that what I know you've already found in your life, what I know I have found, is that when we serve, we are finding the light that already exists. That we are finding what God is up to in our cities and our neighbors. And that Jesus, every time it comes to talking about love, the point of his story, the point of his life, the point of everything he says for us to do, when he is talking about love, his answer is always, you cannot do enough. You cannot love enough. When you think about your family, you're never going to reach a point where you're like, yep, that's enough love for them. They've had enough. When you love a neighbor, you should never reach that point if that's about enough. When Jesus tells a story about love, there is just never enough. Take a look at what we're up to with City Lights, and take a look at what we're hoping you'll jump in with us.
Our City Lights initiative started during a moment when loving our neighbors was riskier than it had ever been, and more important than it had ever been.
Our schools were going to close. Children were coming to principals crying. You know what they're afraid of? Hunger.
My first reaction was, oh my gosh, how are the kids going to eat?
Restaurants and bars had been shut down, so that meant that the clubs were shut down as well. But what about these women? You know, Who's gonna do it?
We learned in those days just how much our lives are connected to each other and just how much it mattered for the church to be on the move.
You bring me your box, full, ready to go. We'll get drivers. We'll send them out with those boxes.
I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know what's going to go on, but we're going to feed the kids.
We're sewing masks here at SouthBrook. We had a dialogue about what can be done, what can we be doing, and they said, let's feed the dancers.
Then City Lights came in, and it was a perfect combination of everything.
There were plenty of right people who were showing up at our doors, calling SouthBrook and saying, what can I do, what can I help? And they were unafraid.
It isn't the government. The first line of responsibility lies on the church.
Today, we're still serving some of those same friends and keeping that love going.
I just think it's something that you feel, and I don't see how you look at others who are less fortunate and don't feel a need to somehow help out with that. You know, we're all here to help each other as a community. That's how we all thrive together.
I found out my uncle had to have his foot amputated, and the hospital wouldn't allow him to come home until he had a wheelchair ramp built to access his front door. And so me and my guy, we did the work.
Being a part of a blessing that God has put in place is just, feeling doesn't touch what that feeling I used to get with drugs.
Me and my wife, we wanted to make sure that we lived in the community, that we wanted to help. We kind of put this camp together to further give back. So we'll pick them up and be their dads.
This is our purpose, to help one another.
We've also made some new friends along the way and jumped in where we saw God moving.
When you go into the situations that we see, a lot of these families could be refugee families that really have any other items. So what Planting Seeds do is come in and furnishes their house. We hope that we can give them a better start to life. I've always felt inside me to serve, but I've never done the action of doing it. And City Lights provided me with that action of getting involved in the community, and the first day with helping others, like I was bought.
It turns out that some invitations are open in every season.
There's a couple things I want you to note there. Is what Chris Horlacher said, is it's not the government's job. It's the church's job to lead the way on this. It's our job. And I really think today the passing by would often be, that's the government's job, is to take care of that person. And if the church was really doing what's supposed to be doing, the government would need to do less than it's doing. But I also want you to notice what Jake said. Jake said something that's very significant. I always wanted to serve, but City Lights provided the opportunity for me to get involved. And I really believe that. I don't think anyone here today goes, Good Samaritan, who needs to serve? I think everybody wants to, but prioritizing it, finding a means by which I can begin to jump in, becomes a major hurdle. And what we intended with the City Lights movement was to say, we want every one of you not to join an organization, the City Lights movement, SouthBrook Church, but to see yourself as a city light. First, see yourself as the person who has it within them to share the light of Christ in dark places. And so we started this movement with the whole intent that we would say at the end of our run someday, we would say Dayton is a better city because of us and what Christ did through us. That there is more light in the dark places of humanity in Dayton because that little church existed. And that's you. That is you. You may be that unlikely person who needs to be helped today out of your self-absorption and saved from that. Saved from the habitual pattern of just doing the American dream and brought into light. Because you see, the thing about this story, the sequel to this is the guy who was beaten is walking down a road one day, right? That's the Good Samaritan part two, is that person then realized, I'll never pass by an opportunity to be a light ever again. And so this series was designed to remind all of us, especially entering into the winter season, that the needs are so great. And the light is so accessible every day. And an interesting thing happened this week, and I hope you understand the spirit in which I'm sharing this. So there's a local station that plays Christmas music. And so when I'm in my car, I'll listen to it. And this station this week was pushing for people to give money to help kids who are hungry. And looking back on it now, every time in between the music, they would come on with this push, I would just get irritated. Like, would they just let up on the feeding the kids? I know. You're part trusting me in your spiritual journey. I know. But do you? I was like, yeah. And then it hit me. They're talking to you. And so I got to my office and I got my phone out, and for $144 I could feed 4 kids for a year. And on the why are you doing this? I just simply put a word, blessed. You know, I've been so blessed. How could I say no? Well, I'm listening to this radio station about 10 minutes later, and they go, we want to thank Charlie from Centerville for being so blessed that he gave to these 4 kids. And I felt stupid that I had been 10 minutes earlier when they let up on the feeding the kids thing. I want to listen to Christmas music. And then the rest of the week, every single time they came on with $444 feeds 4 kids, I was like, yes. I wasn't irritated. I was glad I was a part of that. And if today and every time we make a call for City Lights irritates you, you're the one who needs saved. You're the one who needs saved. In 2009, the University of Rochester did a study of 147 recent university graduates. And it was a longitudinal study to look at their lives 2 years later. And 2 years later, they classified, there were students who just totally had what they called extrinsic goals. I want to make this much money. I want to be having this job in 2 years. I want to be a success extrinsically. That was their intent. And then there were students they classified as those who had intrinsic goals. I want to have relationships. I want to have a meaningful life. I want to have an impact in 2 years that validates my existence on this planet. 2 really interesting findings. One was, after 2 years, everybody got what they wanted. The ones who wanted extrinsic goals got them. The ones who wanted intrinsic goals, and that's how they patterned their life, they got them. Lesson, you're going to get what you want in life. You're going to get what you want. You may be, in that day, a priest and a Levite. We're successful people. If that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. But the second lesson was the people who had intrinsic goals were measurably more happy in life than those who wanted extrinsic goals. No surprise. And so what they suggested was this, and here's what I think we have to craft in a way to do it that doesn't sound corny. They suggested that one of the ways to work your life into an intrinsic mindset, I want to be a city light. I don't want to just be the person who's known for this income, this house, this car. I want to be a city light. Would be when someone asks you, what do you do? That you begin answering that by saying, not what you do in life, but by who you are intrinsically. And you answer it by saying, I'm a mother. I'm married. I have 3 kids. And I'm living to bring light to the world. That simple notation begins to frame an intrinsic modality in your life. Not, I'm a lawyer. I'm a priest. I'm a Levite. But I'm a light. That's what I want to be. I want to be a light to this world. And SouthBrooker, you have that decision to make. Do you know every Sunday you sit in those brown chairs and you don't make a decision to do that, you're more likely every Sunday to become a priest or a Levite. You got all the religious stuff down. You're in. But you keep passing by. And so today we want to do something real hands-on. Leah? So Leah is our director of City Lights. She's the catalytic force behind so many things. I wish we had the time, Leah, to tell, just like show the list of everything that the City Lights movement is doing. But a part of the reason we don't do that is we don't want people to think, I have to join this organization to be a city light, correct? And before you do this, I know, we've wrestled and wrestled with clarity on what it means to be a city light person. We finally brought it to its irreducible minimum. Right. So what is that irreducible minimum? Explain that again via the story today, that you were Jesus. Well, how did that feel to be Jesus today? And the victim. Yeah, and there is a Christology in that, as Laura said. Yeah. But to explain now with the new shirts, why this? Why that line?
Well, even you can love your neighbor. You all have a neighbor. So it is reduced to the minimum of who is my neighbor? Everybody. And who do you want to be your neighbor? You want everybody to be your neighbor. So, and if love is at the center of all we do, because that's what Jesus is about, then it is just as simple as love your neighbor. And your neighbor can also be the person you live with under your roof, and they are sometimes the hardest to love. So we're not moving away from, it's outside of your doors and down the street and around the corner in downtown Dayton. It could really, truly be the person next to you right now on the stage. Yeah. And right now, our neighbors are the people we're sitting with right now. There may be a need that emerges today because you were at this gathering and you noticed that. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing when that happens. Yeah. But we want to flesh that out today. Yeah. We want to make this very real, and someone's going to be city lights when they leave here today. So explain what we're about to do. So obviously we've had the kiosks out for a while, and many of you have stopped by to chat with someone. And over the last couple years, really because of what started, very early on in the pandemic, we were feeding a lot of people through our numerous partnerships with other churches. And then we kind of carried that on for the last couple years with SouthBrook Serves, what we called SouthBrook Serves. And monthly, we were making grocery deliveries. And I just want to say first, thank you to so many of you who faithfully, some of you almost every month, signed up to give a family $100 worth of groceries and then deliver them. It was incredible. We got a little tired of that. It was hard to find the volunteers that we needed every month. So we've made some shifts. And so in this next year, we set aside specific budget money to just make it easier on you to go and provide food and groceries. So when we have these City Light Sundays, which we'll be doing throughout the year, about 6 or 7 every 6 or 7 weeks, we want to give you guys an opportunity during the service to say yes to a prompting that you have. So I have 3 $100 gift certificates with a grocery list and a family that is in need of groceries today. And so if you feel so compelled, you can come right down here and grab one of these and go shopping today with $100 that's provided. Oh, yeah. Thank you. All right. Yes, good deal. Thank you. Oh, look at that. Look. Oh, go. Okay.
Fighting over who can serve.
Thank
I
you.
love this.
Yeah.
Fight, yeah.
Hey, just so you know, we're going to be passing out 3 for the second service, too. My goal is to do really 10 each service. But frankly, I was a little nervous. I wasn't sure, but I was hoping that there would be some fighting over those and that everyone would want to jump up. But you still can, because literally today you can love your neighbor by giving someone a smile, baking some cookies, doing something super simple, prayer walking your neighborhood. So that's how you be a light.
Okay, so here's the deal. You know, no risk it, no biscuit. You gotta start putting it into play right now. So we're going to stand up. Everybody stand up. We're going to pray. I'm going to close this with a prayer. And you, before you leave today, you find someone to smile at, encourage.
Yeah. Love, hug.
Hey, can I pray
High
for you?
five.
Can I pray for you about that? You know, just make the gathering something where what we say should happen happened at the gathering. Correct?
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to put yourself out there to do that. Father, it has been very clear, made by your Son, that the most unlikely person who's the hero of the story, which frankly would have infuriated the audience that was listening, is that the fundamentalist terrorist Muslim was the hero of the story. I mean, that's the equivalent. What? It's because you use the most unlikely people who just have the ability, availability. They have carved out a priority in their life to say, I am the city light. It is not the government's job first. It is my job as a follower of Christ. In Jesus, we give this to you today and pray that there are lights being lit all over this room today. And everyone said,
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.